Hey everyone, welcome back to JP's Budget Collecting and our weekly look back at the hot comics from 6 months ago. This week we're looking back at the hot comics from November 6, 2020, and I'm recording this on May 6, 2021. I give you the dates so you know when this information is actually relevant, given the way the comic market is moving lately. That's not very long. So we try to keep you guys at least knowing where we're at in terms of if you watch this later. As always, we're looking back at the CBSI Hot Top 10 and the Comic Tom Key Collector Hottest Trending Comics of the Week. So each of them put out a list of 10. So we take that list. This week, I think we got 18 books between the two lists, so only 2 crossovers. And we see what we can learn. We see which books continue to trend upward, which books stalled out, and which books drop back considerably, so that we can maybe make some better decisions about which books we chase, which books we're patient on. So without further ado, let's get into this week's list and see if we can learn something. First up, we have the Strange Talent of Luther Strode, number 1. And this hit the list because it was optioned. Basically, it actually originally hit the list about a month or so ago. So that would have been, I guess, in early October, late September. So this was his second time on the list within just a month or two. Back then it was doing like $25, $40. This time when it hit the list, it was up to $125. Back down now to $40 to $60 for raw copies. So it's definitely way down from that $125 plus range. It was going in November, but still actually up from the initial bump it got when the first option news came out. So definitely kind of overspiked, and it's come back down and settled somewhere in between. But still going for good value. I think there's still talk that this is actually going to happen. We'll see. Next, we have Hinch Girl number 1. This hit the list because they announced a series was coming to Freeform. I believe they actually even had casting information on this at the time. This caused raw copies of this comic to jump up to $40 to $50. 9.8 was hitting $180. Not sure about Freeform and how well that's really going to catch on, but we'll see, because the book itself is actually maintained really well. It's still going in the $50 to $70 range. 9.8s are going $200 to $300. So that's actually up from where it was 6 months ago. And actually not the most recent, but there was actually a single raw sale that went for $150. Wonder if that's a little bit of market manipulation, because there's been sales since back in the $50 to $70 range. There were still books listed in the $50 to $70 range. So I'm not sure what happened with that one sale, but just giving you guys all the information. But overall, the book is actually still trending up since it hit the list 6 months ago. Not a ton, but slightly. Next, we have Uncharted number 1. This hit the list because they posted some photos of Tom Holland on the set of the Uncharted movie. We knew this was coming. This caused books to jump up to $50 for raw copies, and it's still sitting in the $40 to $50 range. So this one's been pretty steady. We know this movie's coming. They've been working on it. I think they've actually wrapped filming on it, because I think they wrapped it before he started shooting Spider-Man, which they've been working on right now. So definitely this movie's coming at some point. So this book has stayed pretty steady. People are still on this Uncharted and looking forward to seeing this movie come out. Last of our kind of option TV movie books this week is God of War number 1. And this is because rumors of a Netflix show for this video game. Raw copies jumped up to $45. 9.8s were hitting $110. Now raw copies are $60 to $100. 9.8s are $300 to $450. So this one is way up. I will say most of those 9.8s are actually $300 to $350, but there were a couple sales way higher in the $400 plus range. So yeah, people are jumping on this game as well. So both this Uncharted and God of War people are definitely looking forward to these and hoping that they actually make something out of these. I do think this God of War is also a little bit hard to find compared to most comics. So I think this one's pretty tough. There's not a ton of listings out there. So with that, we're going to move into our covers for the week. First up, we have Green Lantern Corps number 30. Green Lantern Corps number 30, excuse me. This is the 1 in 25 Ward Sutton Mad variant. It's kind of a crossover of Larfleeze and Mad. And basically back then, this book was selling for $50. Now there's only been 2 sales in the last 3 months that I could find on eBay. One went for $1, literally, and the other went for 20. So this is way down. Not sure what caused people to chase this one. Maybe it's somewhat hard to find. It's a 1 in 25 of Green Lantern Corps. I doubt there was a ton of those ordered, but not a cover I particularly enjoy. But well, to each their own. So our next cover is Star Wars Adventures, Shadow of Vader's Castle, #1, and this is the Francisco Francavilla 1 in 10 variant. This was going for $30 plus back then. Currently, no sales at all in the last 3 months of this. Another one that's down. They're only asking $20 for this comic. There's several listings for the $20 range. And it's a cool cover, but there have been no sales. People aren't really interested in this particular Star Wars book, which is weird because most everything Star Wars has been going for big money. But this one has not been going for anything. I don't think there's any key here. It's just a cool cover, and I don't know that it's cool enough to really maintain what those values were. Next, we have a repeat offender from last week's list, and that is Dark Knight's Death Metal, Rise of the New God, #1, the Boss Logic 1 in 25. Last week, we were talking about it, is it I'll be back kind of thing. It was in the, 60 to 100 range, and it dropped back to 20 to 50 now. Well, by this second week that it was on the list, it was 100 plus, so it's definitely moved into kind of the trap range. You can get 9.8s for under 100 now, so $60 to $90. So definitely would have been worth waiting on this one for sure. Next, we have kind of a unique category we get every so often, and I'm calling this annual buzz. And this is books that what fall in here are books that every year, because they're associated with some sort of date, people think about them, they start buying them, there's a little bump. Happens every year. It happens with that 9/11 Spider-Man book, and it happens with this book, V for Vendetta, #1. Every year in early November, around the 5th of November, people think about this book and they buy it. Raw copies jumped up to $25. 9.8s were going for $120. I don't know that they really bumped much in price the way kind of Tom talked about it. I think it was just a big bump in sales, not necessarily price. And it's still kind of sitting in the same range for raw copies, 10 to 40. But 9.8s are actually up. They're 150, 200, which could just be an association with the market. But the general rule here is if it's associated with some sort of date, you wait 6 months and buy it 6 months opposite of that date because that's when people are thinking about it kind of the least. But yeah, this one's still up a little bit, but I would say now would be a better time to buy it than this coming November when you think about it again. Next, we have, we're moving into Comic Buzz, and we have Crossover #1. And this was a highly hyped series from Donny Cates, and then they had a secret variant, and of course, everybody was jumping on that secret variant. I think that it was basically the equivalent of a 1 in 10 on the secret variant. Maybe a 1 in 5. It wasn't a super hard to get secret variant, but 1 in 5 or to 1 in 10. But anyway, raw copies of it were going for $25 to $50 at release. Now they're going 15 to 30, so it was kind of definitely an I'll be back. 9.8s will run you 75 to 125. Next on our Comic Buzz is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Adventures #1, and this is the first appearance of Krang, of Bebop, of Rocksteady, of the Foot Soldiers. Tons of Turtle firsts in this book, and like everything Turtles, this book was spiking and hitting the list last fall, around the time last Ronin came out. Raw copies had jumped up to $200. 9.8s were going to $500 to $600. Raw copies now are actually kind of down a little bit. Really high grade is still running around 200, but most raw copies are running 80 to 120 kind of range. But 9.8s are actually well up. They're going for $900 to $1,200. Everything Turtles is hot. It has been now for a little over a year at this point of just Turtles just going through the roof. I think it started kind of with the Jenica stuff almost 2 years ago now. And it's just his revive and the really good IDW series, I think, has really revived a lot of interest. Now the last Ronin, a lot of Turtles momentum right now. Next we have three copies of the same book, as we're going to talk about. First up is The Last Ronin #1, the Aaron Bartling variant that was limited to 300. This one we talked about last week, and it was going in that $500 range. Now it's going for at this point, 6 months ago, it was going for $700 to $900. Now it's still going $500 to $1,000 for raw copies. 9.8s are going $1,200 to $3,000. Huge range on this book, on the sales. Just, there's not a ton of them come up, and they go for a wide disparity of values depending on who's on any given auction. Recent sales for 9.8s have mostly been in the $1,500 to $2,000 range, but like I said, there's been as cheap as $1,200, as high as $3,000. So this one has been pretty steady for raw copies, though, in that $700 to $900 range. The range is a little wider now, but it's still pretty steady there. So I would kind of leave this as steady and kind of worth it. But a lot of interest in Last Ronin, as we'll see with the next two. The next one is the Stan Yak variant that was limited to 250 copies. This one was going for $200 out the gate. Now it's a $150 to $450 for a raw copy, so that's kind of up for the most part. Interesting enough, the couple of 9.8 sales have been in the same range, $250 to $450. So a little weird, but there's not a lot of these out there either. Only 250 of them exist, and not many of them are actually listed on eBay. So the prices, I think people are just kind of, if they can get it, they buy it, and are willing to pay a pretty good penny for it. So our last one is a book that was actually on the list a couple of weeks ago. This is the New York Comic-Con Kevin Eastman variant that was limited to 1,400 copies. This one back then was going for $140 to $220 raw. Now it's more in the $100 to $150 range, so definitely kind of an all be back. 9.8s are still going $200 to $300. So those are our end of our Last Ronin books. We got 5 more books left on our list to talk about, and first up is our last Comic Buzz book, and that is Wonder Woman Annual #4, first cameo of Yara Flor. This hit the list just a couple weeks ago too. Raw copies were going $15 to $35 back then. Now it's a $10 to $15 book. 9.8 is $80 to $100. So this is kind of, I'm not sure what I think about this as a cameo. There's a little girl on a beach. They kind of refer to like the Brazilian Amazons, and you see this little girl. She kind of looks like the Yara Flor look, but is it really her? I don't know. Probably supposed to be, but kind of a odd cameo. I think I would probably still want that future state if you were interested in this character. But overall, this one has definitely been down since that first buzz around this character 6 months ago. Next, we have Batman 638, the reveal of Jason Todd as Red Hood. And this hit the list because they revealed the suit that Jason Todd was going to wear as Red Hood in the Titans TV show. So that's why this hit the list. Back then it was going for $20. 9.8s were going for $120. And it's basically setting in that same range right now. It's a $5 to $30 book raw, depending on condition. And when you happen to try to buy it, 9.8s are going for $80 to $125, excuse me. So right in that same range around where it was. So this one's been pretty steady. Nice little Jason Todd Red Hood key. Not the main book, it's not his first appearance, not the first appearance of the Red Hood, but another nice book if you're into that character. Next, we have Far Sector #1, the first appearance of Sojourner Jo Mullein. And she is basically hit the list because there was news about the Green Lantern show that's coming to HBO Max. They announced some characters that were going to be on it. People were speculating that maybe she's one of them. So far, I haven't heard anything specific about her. But back then, the book jumped up to $10 to $15. It's kind of continued to climb. It's more of a $10 to $40 book for a raw copy. $100 to $125 book for 9.8. So far, it's been pretty worth it to get in if you got in on this book 6 months ago. I think there's some potential here. Right now, there's nothing official with her. Like, we know we're getting Jessica Cruz. We know we're getting Guy Gardner. We know we're getting Jon Stewart. We don't know for sure if we're getting this character. We know we're getting Simon Baz, but this one is not one that we know for sure that we're getting in that show, but I think there's still the potential there. Might be worth snagging at some point. Next, we have A-Force #1. This is the first appearance of the A-Force team, which is an all-female Avengers team. And basically this had to do with rumors that they were going to make an all-female Avengers movie at some point. So this has been a rumor that's been going on and off, been rumored and discussed for a long time that they were going to go this way at some point. So that's why this hit the list. There were fresh rumors. One of the actresses, I believe, the actress that plays Shuri, was talking about how much she'd love to be involved in something like that. So basically, back then, raw copies were going for $10. 9.8 jumped up to $100, where they'd been like $50 the week before. Now raw copies are $5 to $20. 9.8s are $125 to $175, so this one's up a little bit. People are still speculating that this might come to fruition. Still not sure how much of a real key this is. There is a first appearance of a character in this. I forget her name now, but for the most part, it's not really first appearances. This is a team. We'll see if it actually how high the ceiling is actually on that book. And our last book of the week is Star Wars number 81, 81 from 1983. And this is the Boba Fett Escape from the Sarlacc Pit issue. This is where we get the story about how he gets out of the Sarlacc Pit. And basically, raw copies of this were going for $40 to $50 back then. 9.8 was hitting $225, and that was all because we saw him at the end of the first episode of The Mandalorian. That's what was the response here. Spoilers if you still haven't watched The Mandalorian. Sorry about that. Raw copies are now going for $30 to $80. 9.8s are $500 to $800, and it's jumped. This book has jumped way up because it's a Star Wars book with some sort of key to it, and all of them have jumped way up in the last 6 months to a year. So that's this week's list. I'm going to add a little summary slide here at the end that I hope you guys enjoy. That kind of breaks down what we got, what we went through. And with that, we'll catch you next time.